So in this video, I'll be going over conditionals in Java. These run under certain conditions, the most basic of which is an if statement, where you have an if, parentheses, and then curly brackets. And if takes a Boolean here, so true, false, that kind of thing. And if it's true, then whatever is inside will run. And if it's false, then it will skip over this block entirely. So for instance, this is true, we run it, and the code will run, but false, it will not. And if statements take, see, nothing comes out. If statements take a Boolean value, so true, false. You can also have variable checks like x equals 5 would return true, but x equals 6 is false, so it would skip this. And there's a lot you can do in this conditional statement, including uses of like ands or ors, but there's a separate video on Booleans and how all that works. So if takes in a Boolean value here, and it checks if it's true, and if it is, it will all run. If not, it will skip it. And then you can have a lot of code in here. You can have ifs inside of ifs where, you know, it'll run part but not all of it, but that's just kind of how you apply it. The next step of an if is if you have an else here, an else chains to the if directly above it, and there can't be anything in between here that the else would have an issue there. So else's go right after an if, and then so else's run if the if statement is false and it's skipped over, then it goes if this, it's not, otherwise run this. And that's how we get this running no, skipping over the high, and then running the next part. And else's don't take any arguments here. The next step, to kind of extend this, is you can chain a bunch of ifs and else's together. So if instead of else, I do else if x equals 7, x is 7 here, or here, I'll start with if x equals 5, then I can put another else underneath it. And now Java will go through a chain of things here where it will check if this first one is true. If it is true, none of this will get run because it's just an else conditional. But if this is not true, then it checks the else if, and it checks this second Boolean. And if that's not true, then it goes to the next one, to this else. So if I run this, x is 5, this will give us the no again. But if I made this, say, 7, now the first two are both false, and it will run down to the third one. And you can chain these together like else if x is 8, and it will again go 1, 2, 3, 4 in order of the else ifs that are all chained together. And when you put a new if, it will restart it. When you have an else, it ends it, and you have a new if, it starts the new set of logic. An extension of the if-else idea, where you can simplify it if you only want one kind of true or false thing to run and you want it to be shorter, is you can use it's called a ternary operator, where like I have this empty string word, and if I want it to change based on whether x is or isn't 5, I can just say word equals, and then in this section the syntax is you do your Boolean, so like x equals 5, and then you put a question mark, and that tells it that whatever's right in front of it is a Boolean that it needs to check. And then if it's true, then you put in a value that it will return. So this is what it will return if it's true. And then I mistypoed there. You put a colon, and then what will run if it's false. So when it sees this question mark colon, it will check what's right before as its Boolean. If it's true, it'll run this, and if it's false, it'll return whatever the second one is. So it's a self-contained function that you can put in kind of anywhere. And if I run this now, it will give me high because word has been set to a high as this is true. The next extension of this if, else kind of conditional format is a switch, where here I have, if I have a variable here and I do switch and then I type the name of the variable and then curly brackets, now in here I can do case, I can have a bunch of cases, and then I break to escape it, and then I would do like case 2, break, and I'm just going to go down here now to case 5, break, and then in here I can have code that might run like print high, and then I'll do the same but here and here, and then I'll make this hello and hi there. I run this and it gives hi there, because what this does is it takes this variable and then it checks, is it 1, is it 2, is it 5? It checks for each case here, and you can have as many cases as you want. And this also works for strings, so you could have like string x is a, and you would then make this case A, case B, case C, case, case hello even. It checks to see if the variable equals the case, and then it runs whatever's in here, and then you need a break to break out of the case. Switch can also have a default which is kind of the else of it. It's if nothing else, if none of the other cases run, then you get down to the default, and then you need a break again. The last kind of conditional I'm going to cover in this video is while. And whiles are more like ifs in syntax, in that you have the parentheses, brackets, and it takes a boolean here. So maybe I'll make this like while x is 5, and then whatever's in here will run. And you could do this. While is a conditional loop, so it will run while x is 5. When it gets to the end, it will pop back up, check this conditional, and come down again. And if you don't have a break case here, if you don't have some way to change this boolean, it will just run forever. So I'm not going to run this to test it, because it would just start printing line after line after line after line as long as x is true. Meanwhile, if I did x, if I increase x now, run it, it will run through once. It will run through once, print this, and then when it reaches the bottom, it will check its boolean again. So initially it was true, now I've changed it, it will stop. But if I had, like, if I started this at 1 and did x less than 5, then it would go, 4 times. And that's how you get kind of looping systems that can be changed depending on your incoming variables.